sorry guys, go to Nick.
Yeah, it's very important, sorry.
And Hayden rocks, by the way.
Hey, I just like everyone to know that she lost the game. Sorry guys.
Say that it's great seeing so many faces that I love all together, but I can't actually see all that well, so I'll just assume that it's wonderful, and I'm sure I'd be thrilled if I could actually see. Did you guys have fun tonight? Awesome. Yes, can you give a round of applause actually for Wilson and Nick, because that was a big lot of fun. Cool. So this is actually the last night before Easter. A little bit sad. Thank you. Appropriate response. Well done. So Nick actually asked if I would speak about something to do with Easter tonight. So as I got thinking about that, I was like, well, what comes to mind when I think of Easter? And I don't know about you guys, but there's 4 things that come to mind for me, and they're not actually all that, spiritual. Because first of all, I think of Easter eggs. Yeah. And then I think of Easter egg hunts, because they're always fun. And then I think of the fact that we normally get holidays off, which is really great. And then obviously as well, I also think, awesome, it is a time of reflection for Jesus and what he did for us and the salvation that because of his victory in the cross that we now have when we reach out and accept that. So most of these things are sort of quite light and fluffy. But in reality, the actual story of what happened over Easter, initially it seemed like a pretty miserable kind of story. So I actually just want a few of that I spoke to earlier to come up here and read for all of us a few verses about Easter time from the Bible, because I thought it might be a bit good to hear some other voices apart from mine up here. So we've got Mel and Steph and Tristan and Brandon. And I'd just like you to listen into them. Thanks, guys.
When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "As you know, the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then Jesus went with his disciples to the place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will."
Some of the governor's soldiers took Jesus into their headquarters and pulled out the entire regiment. They stripped him and put the scarlet over him. They wove thorn branches into a crown and put it on his head, and they placed a reed stick in his right hand and a scepter. Then they knelt before him in mockery and taunted, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spit on him and grabbed the stick and struck him on the head with it. When they were finally tired of mocking him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him again. Then they led him away to be crucified. As they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull, then the soldiers nailed him to the cross. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. A sign was fastened to the cross, announcing the charge against him. It read, "The King of the Jews." 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left.
The people passing by shouted abuse, shaking their heads in mockery. "Ha, look at you now," they yelled at him. "You said you were going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Well then, you save yourself and come down from the cross." The leading priests and the teachers of religious law also mocked Jesus. "He saved others," they scoffed, "but he can't save himself. Let this Messiah, this King of Israel, come down from the cross so we can all see it and believe in him." Even the men who were crucified with Jesus ridiculed him.
At midday, darkness fell across the whole land until 2 o'clock. Then at 2 o'clock, Jesus called out with a loud voice, my God, why have you abandoned me?" Then Jesus uttered another loud cry and breathed his last, and the curtain in the sanctuary of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom.
Thank you so much, guys. In the spirit of Easter. Cool, thanks. So, that was actually, it was just an absolutely horrible thing, and I want to just pause right there and remind you guys that this is real. I think sometimes, particularly if you've been familiar with the Bible growing up, sometimes we forget how real it was, and we think about it just as a collection of stories like, I don't know, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or something, like it was just this fairy tale, and it actually wasn't. This was real, it was horrible, it was painful. He was a full human being that was nailed alive to a cross. And I look at that and I think at that and I think, how could he, facing such a horrible and painful thing to come, how could he stand there and say, "Yeah, Father, I trust you, have your way"? And you know, I want to say to you, I think it's because Jesus was able to trust his Father in the most painful and most scary situation of his life in going to the cross. And he was able to say, not my will, but yours be done. Because this was the will of a Father whose love Jesus knew so well and trusted so completely that he was able to follow him with complete surrender and complete obedience. It wasn't because Jesus has to, because he's Jesus and does the right thing, I'm going to do this. It was I know my Father. I know my Father's love for me, and that love is so pure and so great that he would never send me into anything that was evil. And so it was a trusting response to it, to love that Jesus knew. And so he shows us in our own lives, when things don't seem great and they seem dark and uncertain, he shows us that we can entrust ourselves to a Father who has the purest of love for us. And you know, the Bible actually says that there is no fear in love. It even goes further to say perfect love drives out all fear. And how can that be? It's because love, pure love, it only wants the best for the other person, okay? So if you think about someone or something that you really love, maybe it's just a pet, or maybe it's a friend, or maybe it's a family member, but it's just someone that's really close to your heart, okay? And could you ever think about intentionally hurting that person? No way, like that's not what love is. Love acts for the best of the other person. And so if we can feel like that, if we can feel love like that, and we're kind of small, imperfect human beings, how must God, who is a perfect, holy and good Father, how must he feel about us, his kids, who he created? Okay, and so this is why we can trust him implicitly all the time, because his love for us is so strong and so pure. And so we look at Jesus trusting his Father's love and going to the cross, even though he knew that there was so much pain ahead for him. But then, amazingly, what was the outcome of this event that just seemed like there was no hope and like it was the end of everything that had been hoped for? It was salvation for the world. It was triumph out of a tragedy, okay? What Jesus did on the cross and in rising again was allowing us to have an eternity with our Father in heaven, in a place that's perfect and free from pain and suffering, where there's peace and joy. And not just eternity, but he gave us the opportunity now in this life to know him and to give up all of our hurt and all of our imperfection as a trade for his perfect beauty and